I've noticed in the last couple of years as our exoneree community is growing, and every year we have our Innocence Conference and we bring exonerees together, the disparity within that group. We've got some people who've been exonerated who are millionaires, and they were lucky in the sense that they were in jurisdictions where they were able to launch lawsuits. The people who wronged them in their case didn't have immunity, or they were able to get through that immunity because their case was so outrageous, and they've ended up getting big sums of money. And we've got far more within that group who are indigent, who, have no chance at a lawsuit, have no chance at compensation, and yet all these individuals went through the same thing. They were wrongfully convicted by the government. And even as a lawyer, I have difficulty comprehending that. I can't imagine what it's like for our clients when they see someone else who's got $20 million who went through the same thing that they did, and their lawyers explaining to them a bunch of technicalities as to why they can't get compensated. Most of the states now have compensation laws, but they're different in every state, and some will just give benefits like educational benefits, and others will give larger sums of money. And each state has different hoops you got to jump through to get that compensation. In California, our law looks great on the surface. It's $100 a day for every day you were wrongfully incarcerated, but the government has stopped giving those out. I don't know if it's because California is broke, but there's now been a policy the last 4 or 5 years where they fight every single one of these cases. They make us relitigate them in front of an administrative board, and they deny almost every one of them. And so we need to do better. And if there's not a compensation law in your state, the only thing you can do is look for a lawsuit. But you have problems of statute of limitations running, where under the case law it'll say, well, your claim occurred when you were first wrongfully convicted, and you should have filed your lawsuit years ago, which is ludicrous because these guys are sitting in prison with no lawyer and not able to file a lawsuit. Or the people are immune, who are the ones that put you behind bars. Judges, total immunity; prosecutors, total immunity; and police officers have near total immunity. So, the one civil suit, for example, that we've been successful for one of our clients was because social workers were involved in wrongfully convicting our client. And the only way we were able to get to the county that wrongfully convicted him was through the social workers. But the social workers weren't the most culpable. The police, the prosecutor, judge involved in the case were really the most culpable. And so it's again, it sounds just like legal mumbo jumbo to me. And I'm a lawyer. So, we need to do better. These wrongful convictions, if they're a cost of our criminal justice system, that people have to go to prison who are innocent, then we have a responsibility to do something about that when they get out.
Those once exonerees actually get out, some states have policies, like Texas, surprisingly, has I think one of the most generous, if you can use such a word, most generous, kind of like, we screwed up, here, have your life back kind of financial packages for exonerees. It just that seems to be the kind of the cruelest injustice in many ways. Not only did we take away years, decades of your life and completely upend it and separate you from your family, but we're also not going to try to help you get back on your feet in any way. And that is a recipe for a very, very long struggle through life that continues well after you leave the prison gates an innocent person.
Pension. We get out with no medical insurance, and we were saying earlier, parolees get badger care, exonerees get out. And that's one of the fights that these people that are trying to get these laws enforced are saying. There are many states that have some very generous compensation laws. Keith Finley, my attorney, and many others have been working to get a law to try to get that changed and try to get it retroactive. Right now, it is, I was like the 9th exoneree with the Wisconsin Innocence Project, and I think they just had their 20th. And just a couple of them have been compensated. They have a very, very measly compensation program. It's $5,000 with a cap at $25,000.
About a little over half of the states in the U.S. have some kind of law on the books that permits someone whose case has been overturned and who can prove their innocence in one way or another to get compensated. In Illinois, we call that device a certificate of innocence. Essentially, it's a civil claim saying you have to prove a couple things. Number one, that you were convicted of a crime, that you served all or part of your sentence, and that you didn't contribute to your conviction, and that you are in fact innocent. So it's a higher burden. It's not to be found not guilty. You have to prove your innocence. In Illinois right now, that entitles you to a maximum of about $200,000. And usually that still takes a couple of years because, again, it is a separate court proceeding. This person is now going through another proceeding, but at least we have it. We're very proud in Illinois that we have a compensation statute. So in our state, a certificate of innocence is the thing that's filed and hopefully granted by the judge, which then allows the person to, now it's on the books that you'll get mental health benefits, a small amount, but some, and you get your record expunged, even if there's some other account on there or some other conviction from before, and that you will get this money. But for example, Jerry Miller was my first client, our first client at Life After Innocence, and he had done 26 years for kidnapping, rape, and burglary that he did not do. 26 years, had never been arrested before. He was an Army cook, and the maximum he could get was $200,000 for those 26 years. So when he was 26, he went in, he got out as a 52-year-old man. And again, we're proud that we have a compensation statute. But what we're hoping to do at Life After Innocence is to increase the amounts of compensation. Because to go through 2 years and then your 26 years, again, it's great, we're proud of it, but it's just really not enough.
I got $300,000 for my 8 years, 11 months, and 19 days in prison and 2 years on death row. It comes to $9.97 a day, I think. Somebody do the math, but you know what? They can't give people like Jerry and Randy or myself or these other fellows enough. But you just don't want to throw millions of dollars at it. Well, I would take it, but I wouldn't throw $1 million at somebody and not give them counseling, not give them some formal training, and talk to them about like, I mean, you know, these people have been like they've been to war.
I've had a problem with the term compensation. You know, after almost an 18-year battle to gain my freedom, I entered into another 8-year battle in civil litigation, which was even a tougher struggle because the state of Illinois by this time had 20 exonerated death row inmates, second only to Florida. And the corruption involved in my case, all the way to 2 governor's offices, the hierarchy of the Illinois State Police, they all hired mob boss lawyers in Chicago, 22 of them, to fight me over an 8-year period, spending over $13 million of taxpayers' money. I settled with the state police and the city of Paris and the county of Edgar County. And it was only after that that the case didn't go to trial. But of course they never admitted any wrongdoing. But they were trying to outlive me, and they probably would have. Had I went to trial and won $20 million, they took another 10 years appealing that. With taxpayers' money being spent to defend them, I ended up with about $7 an hour for every hour I spent in prison. And you know, that's it in a nutshell, which you figure a lot of people want to call that compensation. I say, how are you going to compensate me for a third of my life? You going to make me 35 years old again? You going to give me back my wife and my kids? No. I call it damages. You know, it is being levied criminal damages is what it should be called, because there's no compensating somebody for being in a cage and being tortured and being on a clock with 2 execution dates. But the state of Illinois, unless you get an innocence-based pardon from a governor, or you get a certificate of innocence from the court you were convicted in, the same corrupt court, of course, then you have no alternative but to sue them in 1983. Then again, starts another battle. They will never ever admit any wrongdoing, any accountability. They'd just as soon spend millions of dollars of taxpayers' money to try to cover up the truth. Yeah, different state. There's 21 states that offer different forms of compensation, and most of those have a cap of maybe $200,000, regardless of the years you spend in prison. And all of them are inadequate. You know, some of them are $5,000 a year, some are $15,000 a year, and all these states vary across the country. That's why Witness to Innocence for the last 3 years has formed a federal compensation campaign committee, which we have been in Washington, D.C. lobbying Senator Patrick Leahy, Senator Dick Durbin, who are sympathetic towards our cause. But we did this as a nonprofit organization on a shoestring budget, and we run out of funding. But the exonerees do have their foot in the door in Washington. We wanted compensated like the Japanese Americans that were interred during World War II, 9/11 victims' family members. You know, we're such a small group that it wouldn't be a lot of money. But the federal government condones what the state does. We're sentenced to death under federal guidelines. And the federal government should be accountable for the sins of the state. And that's going to be our argument as soon as we get a bill champion in place. But it takes 5 years to get a bill through Congress. And all these different states offer different types of compensation. A lot of times you're barred, time barred, or if you have a prior, you're barred regardless of the evidence, regardless of the circumstances of your wrongful conviction. And, you know, it all boils down to how much money are you going to spend to execute somebody? Would you rather give them a life without parole sentence for $500,000, or you want to spend $3.5 million to strap them on a gurney? And that's what Illinois spent. Over $70 million trying to execute 20 innocent men that were on death row. How many bridges would that have built? But they don't care. It's not their money. It's the taxpayers' money.
Civil suit, yeah, but what I was told was my time may have ran out. So I want to challenge that still, because I think, you know, when certain things are done, you know, it shouldn't be a time. It shouldn't be a time on how do you know, help a person redeem himself. You know, it shouldn't be a time on it. So yeah, I still want to challenge it.